Good evening, everyone. As Toya mentioned before, my name is Lindbergh Bell. I am a teacher, farmer, educator, quite a few other names,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
in particularly, I have been in agriculture for over 30 years. I started my career back around 1989, 1990 in agriculture. Particularly, I was afforded the opportunity where I traveled to Venezuela, where I pursued my studies. I did pursue some studies also in Mexico and in Taiwan, but particularly in agriculture and more in small ruminants, also in terms of poultry and rabbits. Sometime later, I did some training in some in hydroponics, some in aquaculture, dry farming, as we will speak about a little bit later, and quite a few other areas I've done certificates in. So I try my best to inform myself and try to educate myself so I can make myself the best possible farmer. Today, what we'll be looking at is water management and irrigation. In particular, we'll be looking at effective strategies for water use, irrigation methods, and conservation techniques to support crop production and climate resilience. Now, in particular, when we speak about climate resilience, this is something we hear a lot in the public sphere. And it is that because we, as a small island state, not just St. Kitts and Nevis, but in terms of other small islands of the Caribbean, we know for sure that we have seen the effect that climate change can have on us. So we need to ensure that not just our houses and so forth, but in particularly our food source is climate resilient. So we'll go forward now into my presentation. This is a quote that I saw some time ago. It says, once you carry your own water, you will learn the value of every drop. It's an African proverb. Okay, Toya, you can hear me?
To disturb your presentation, but is it necessary to put your presentation by expand presentation?
Okay, Toya, you are breaking up. I cannot hear anything clearly you're saying.
I'm asking if you can kindly present presentation.
Toya, let me exit my screen and I'll just pause it. Can you send me something, call me on WhatsApp because I cannot hear you clearly from here, Toya. Excuse me. Okay, good evening. My apologies for that. We will continue our presentation. This evening, as I mentioned before, we're looking at water management and irrigation. Particularly, we are here now at an African proverb that tells us, once you carry your own water, you will learn the value of every drop. Now, for those persons in agriculture, we will know how valuable water is. And even more particular, water in agriculture, that it is that without this, there's not very much that we can do. So that's what we're looking at. When we look about water management and irrigation, water management and irrigation is a cornerstone for sustainable agriculture. And for the series that we've been doing so far, particularly all of this information is geared towards ensuring that agriculture not just only fits for what we need today, but it fits for all of the generations coming forward. So it must be sustainable. Water management and irrigation is vital to achieve sustainable agricultural practices. They enable the efficient use of water resources, which directly impacts our crop productivity and overall agricultural sustainability and environmental sustainability. Now, for those of you who farm, we know quite a few of our farmers and our farmers who have irrigation coming to them. So it is what we're looking at the screen here right now. This is one of the main sources of where that we either gather water, collect, or we store water. On one side, you'll see a roofing where water is collected through gutters and stored in the tank. And the other one, we see what we call surface runoff water, where water is caught and sent down into some kind of gully or some aqueduct, a way of storing that water for you to use later on in your agriculture. For us, when we're looking at water management, we need to understand what is the importance of water management, and in particularly water management in agriculture. As we plant our crops, we want to ensure that we have maximum yield. Having a proper water management system that will assist us in ensuring that we maximize the crop yields and we ensure that we have the right amount of water at the right time going to our crops, so we don't have any water that's being wasted. In particular, we need to ensure also, as part of this management, that we have some method in place in terms of water resource conservation. Conserving water or conserving water as a resource through smart irrigation techniques and practices help to maintain the balance between the quantity of water we have, our local ecosystem, and that we ensure that we'll have water for all our future crops and even for future farmers. We know that agriculture, it is being directly negatively affected by climate change. So we need to ensure, as part of this water management and irrigation system, that we have some form of climate adaptation to that system. Now, adaptation to climate change is facilitated by effective water management, and this enables farmers to implement strategies that can mitigate the impact of extreme weather on crop production. In particular, with the Caribbean, where we now see we have our hurricane season, where we will have sometimes a long period of drought, and then we have excessive rain. And these two vast changes sometimes cause landslides. And it is that a farmer producing his crop is difficult for him to mitigate just by watching what's happening. So if you have strategies in place where he can mitigate this can help him in terms of determining what crops to plant and when to plant those crops. The diagram we see here, we see a type of flooding, which is a way some farmers use to irrigate their crops, but it is in some areas, this can be disastrous to some farmers. Now, this happens, as previous slide we saw before, where we speak about mitigating or putting strategies in place to mitigate against climate change. So in sustainable farming practices, we need to have effective water management. This would help to promote farming practices which are essential for not just the immediate or short term, but for long-term farming practices. And this also ensures environmental health and ensuring the food security, not only at a country level, but even as a farmer seeks now to produce food to feed his family and as a source of income for him. Now, we already have the water resource. We know it is important. We look at now what is the importance of water conservation when it comes particularly for you, a farmer, or even in general as a person. We look here now directly at preserving ecosystems. Now, we know water conservation plays a vital role in protecting the diversity of ecosystems as they ensure natural habitats receive the adequate amount of water in the appropriate time. That will assist a lot in maintaining biodiversity, and it also helps to sustain the flora and the fauna that we depend on. Now, the flora and the fauna, the flora in particular, that we depend a lot on comes from our honeybees and our butterflies, which are pollinators for our crops. So it is we have a good source or a good strong ecosystem which maintain the flora and the fauna, it is that this would go a long way in ensuring that we have the flowers where these honeybees and so on can live and reproduce so they can assist us in the pollinating of our plants. In particularly, having a proper maintained system, it helps to reduce water scarcity. Now, this usage can significantly alleviate the scarcity of water at the essential times when our crops are planted, and in particular, ensuring the communities have access to sufficient water for drinking, sanitation, and in particular for agriculture. Now, even though my presentation this evening, what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks, we are focusing more on direct in agriculture. Agriculture does have a direct connection in terms of sanitation, ensuring that we have healthy soil, and ensuring also that we have proper drinking water. So we need to make sure we have that. Now, having access to proper drinking water and conserving water, this also helps you as a farmer or even as a householder to lower your utility bill. Now, this is beneficial for individuals and families. And we know how expensive it can be as a farmer who sometimes have to carry or purchase water and transport water to his farm that may be not close to a water source. So having good management of that water source would assist a lot in terms of financial alleviation or lowering his cost for it. Now, having good water management also, this now assists greatly in terms of minimizing the consumption. We significantly reduce the environmental impact that we have. We sometimes have to use energy, whether it is to extract the water from the ground, or even to transport water from one port to the next, or even to transport water from maybe a desalination plant to where we want to have that water. Also, in terms of the distribution of the water, we have access to it. That does have a cost. And it is that all three of these examples that I just gave do have an impact on the environment. So it is that we are looking at that and ensuring that we have that as part of our management practice. Now, for those of us who live more in the city areas, there are some countries who've already developed water conservation practices. And the diagram we do see here, we see a sidewalk, but this is not just any sidewalk. It is one that is designed in such a way that inside it collects water. Now, this water goes a long way in terms of assisting with the flora and the fauna that you see on the sidewalk. And as we mentioned in the previous slide, this flora and fauna also assist in ensuring that we have the beautiful flowers that we like to have and that we have the biodiversity that we need for our butterflies and bees that assist in our pollination. This is just one way that we can use to do that. Now, in doing that, we can look at this way of more efficiently and more effectively using our water. Now, we have our low flow faucets. Now, this particular, you may say, but this is not direct in agriculture. But remember, we all live on one planet. So if it is that it is affected in one area, it does have an effect on the other area. So even if you now decide, well, I have a lot of water in my house, I can use as much as I can, you must remember that water comes from one source, and it would directly affect in terms of the amount of water you may have available for agriculture. So low flow faucets in your toilet, shower heads significantly decrease the amount of water you use. They are essential in urban settings to help to reduce water demand, and it also go a long way in reducing your utility bill also. A rain garden is one that we look at, and we look at what we're looking at here. This type of rain garden is designed to capture and to absorb rain and runoff water in impervious surfaces. They not only reduce stormwater pollution, but also enhance the urban area and the green and the local biodiversity. As we mentioned before, we do need the honeybees, we need the butterflies, we need all these insects that assist in pollination. So a rain garden also not only helps in conserving water or reusing the water, it also helps in ensuring that the biodiversity we have for our pollination. Xeriscaping, as we call it, as you see the diagram here, this is where we plant plants that are designed particularly to use less water, or in the case where we have water shortage, the plants themselves function as a way of a cover crop for the soil, to keep the soil, keep moisture in the soil, to keep nutrient in the soil. And it also helps with the biodiversity in terms of animals, flora and fauna. They will have their home in this ecosystem. So this goes a long way in assisting us in that. Now, for those persons who are in the larger countries who have already designed smart irrigation systems, what they do in this area, they now use advanced sensors and water data to maximize the use of water. These systems ensure that the water is applied only when necessary, and this significantly reduces the loss of water or the use of or inefficient use of water. We do have some water cycling technologies. In particular, I can mention here in things we do now have two functioning desalination plants where we are now desalinating salt seawater into fresh water for us to be able to use in our irrigation system and in our farming. Now, one particular precision efficient use of water in our farm is a drip irrigation system. Now, this system one, you're going to see it mentioned several times in my presentation this evening, as it is, this is one of the technologies that were developed where water is applied directly to the plant root. Up to 80% of the water used in the drip irrigation goes directly to the plant. Once you ensure that this system is efficiently established and functioning, then the water or the plant maximizes the amount of water that goes to it. So the drip irrigation delivers the water directly to the zone or the roots of the plant, thus minimizing evaporation and runoff and maximizing the amount of water that goes into the plant. On the other hand, we see those countries who have a large amount of water who may use channeling, as you see on the other side of the screen, as a way of using the water for agriculture. This is not a way that we can have that water. The water will be trapped and it will be soaked into the soil through leaching, where the crops, roots can have access to this water. Now, when we look at water conservation and irrigation, there are some challenges that we mentioned before that we have to that, particularly climate change. Now, climate change is one of the factors that does affect directly our access, the availability, and the distribution of water. Climate change leads to erratic weather patterns affecting rainfall distribution and water availability. Now, we've seen sometimes the hurricanes that we have in the Caribbean that are becoming much more severe. And in these severe hurricanes, we do have an excessive amount of water being falling at a short period of time. And this in itself can cause erosion, can cause landslides. And quite a bit of this water, it is difficult for us to capture most of this water, as it does come at a point in time when it's very, very windy. So it does cause some damage. When we look at pollution also, in particularly environmental pollution, now this may be coming from agricultural, industrial runoff, use of agricultural chemical, urban waste, or even water, our methods we use for water collection. This can cause environmental pollution. We do have sometimes where in the larger countries that does have industries, that the pollutants that come from these industries go into the air and then come down to us through the rain. Particularly, or finally, our last one that we were looking at this evening is infrastructure and policy limitations. Now, quite a few of our smaller islands do have aging and inadequate infrastructure for the collection of water. We also do have policies where persons are allowed to go into areas that should be designated as a preserved area. We're talking about area in our mountainous area where when the clouds come across, that's what causes the condensation, and thus we get the water going into our water system. And this does hamper the effective collection and distribution of water, leading to inefficiencies and particularly to the loss of water and soil. Now, we're going to pause here. There's quite a bit of information I've given you in terms of water, how we collect it, why it's important for us to conserve it, and how we conserve it. A bit of information also we had in terms of the challenge that we have in terms of water conservation and water collection. So I know that I hope that we would have put some questions into the question and answer area. So I want to pause here, and then we will ask some questions, and then we'll continue on and we will further discussion. So I'm going to now just pass over to Toya, where we can now respond to some of the questions you might have, and then we continue our presentation. Toya?
Well, correct. Right? Hearing me better?
No, you're still
Are you
breaking up.
hearing me? Oh my gosh, apologies, but currently in the chat, ask a question. And however, we don't.
Okay, all right. Then we'll just continue in what we're looking at. I will continue. Now, what we're going to be looking at here, these two particular information. One is the water cycle. Now, for persons, this is something we've seen over and over. You've seen this since you're in primary school, going to high school, college. It has not changed. A simple water cycle here, this is where we get our water from. Quite a bit of that water is evaporated from the ocean. It rises up, condenses in the clouds, and from the clouds we have precipitation, or we have rain as we call it. Now, some of this water, if it goes up into the colder area, it is stored as snow, as we find in the higher elevation. The rest of it comes down in rain. Some of it goes down and is infiltrated, and it goes down into the ground, into our groundwater or underground water. Some of it runs off into springs and is stored. Some of it goes into stream, and some simply goes straight back into the ocean. This is something we've seen. Now, when we spoke originally about pollution, I spoke about the effect of the environment that disrupts this cycle. At this point where we have condensation, if it is that at this point in time, we are seeing now where in that area we have the pollution, by the time the rain comes down, we are now having polluted water going into our aqueducts, polluted water going into our freshwater storage, and polluted water going down to our streams. So this does affect us. Now, just a bit of facts about this. We're looking at here, in particular, looking at the water that we have on our planet. 97% of the water on the planet is salt water, meaning it's not water that we can readily drink as is. Only 3% of the water on the earth is fresh water. These are just some facts I want to share with you. Another 3% of that water, only 1% of that is available direct for us to drink. More than 70% of that 3% is stored in glaciers, is stored in the frozen ice in the Arctic. And the remaining quantity of that, the 29%, is what we have, what we call subterranean water, water we have underground. That water we have to go and drill for that water. Now, this slide in particular is very important because for us to understand how important water is. That's what we are looking at. Apologies. Okay. Now, as we're looking at water management and irrigation, we're looking at now at where we came from in terms of irrigation methods. We didn't just wake up one day and decide we're going to have a drip irrigation. We had in the old ancient times, surface water simply, they had channels where they distributed the water, and that's where they stored the water in some valleys. As they move further across the Middle Ages, we started ensuring and introducing the furrowing system, which allowed more efficient water use by channeling water along roads, as was seen in the Mayans. As we developed more now into the 20th century, we had the sprinkler system, which enabled water to be applied a bit higher over a larger area. But we did see a lot of this water being lost to irrigation. And now in our more modern times, we now see an adaptation of drip irrigation and what we now call precision method of delivering water directly to the roots of the plants, thus optimizing the efficiency of this water. What we'll be looking at now is just some regional conservation techniques that are now being applied within our region, within the oasis, and within the Caribbean for maximizing water and irrigation. One, and this was something that was mentioned before in terms of minimum tillage. When we're speaking about minimum tillage, we mean that what we're trying to do is to reduce the actual disturbing of the structure and the texture of the soil, thus maintaining the moisture and the organic matter in the soil. As most of you might have heard already, once we maintain the structure and the organic matter, this goes a long way in assisting the infiltration of water and the retention of moisture in the soil. We look now at retention of crop residue. Now, when we speak about retention of crop residue, what we are speaking about is using whatever left back after you harvested your pumpkins, harvested your corn, harvested your beans, that green vegetation that you have left back, you leave the vegetation in the ground. You can easily maybe just uproot it and let it cover the soil. And it is that acts as a permanent soil cover, which protects the soil from erosion, it regulates the soil temperature, and it also conserves moisture by reducing the direct sunlight from evaporating the moisture from the soil. Crop rotation also serves as an excellent factor in assisting us in that way. What it simply does, it means you alternate different crops and you help to improve not only the soil health, but also the nutrient content in the soil. And in keeping that nutrient content, you help to also break up the pest cycle. Now, that is important because we are planting our crops. We don't want the pests to attack our crops and destroy our crops. We want to be able to harvest our crops healthy so we can then take it to market. In doing that also, in breaking up the pest cycle and maintaining nutrient in the soil, that assists us a long way making our crops, yes, less disease-free, less stress, and thus improve our own crop production. We look also now at agroforestry. Now, for those countries who do have a wide open area, where you do have a forest area, we can use agroforestry as a way of benefiting us in terms of maintaining the amount of nutrient, not only nutrient, maintaining the amount of moisture and water, and help us in managing the water we have in our soil and access to that water. Agroforestry provides a shade for the soil. It reduces the wind erosion. Wind erosion does assist in moving the soil, so we have a loss of the topsoil. It also enhances the soil fertility. As these large trees, they drop their leaves, the leaves rot, and then incorporated the soil as organic matter. It also helps to increase the biodiversity and thus regulate the small microclimates and the small biosphere that we have around those plants, be it in the roots, in the soil, or in the trees. Now, in particularly, as we mentioned, we spoke about crop rotation. We have what we call cover cropping. Now, we do have some persons who use cover cropping as a way of growing crop, particularly to sell for your market. But we are speaking now here doing cover cropping, particularly to make sure we keep the moisture in the soil. So we plant some crops that will grow primarily for soil and ecosystem benefit, for keeping organic matter in the soil, for suppressing weed, for improving soil that is compacted, and also for improving water infiltration. Now, cover crops, they may be any type. You may decide I just want to plant some grass that I can then keep my soil area. I can then cut that grass to use, but then the grass roots will help to keep the soil together and add some organic matter. Grass does also go a long way in regulating soil temperature and keeping moisture, and also assist, or it may be used as a cash crop. You may decide what I would like to do is to plant a crop like pumpkin or squash or any one of those crops in a running crop family, or maybe decide to plant beans. These are crops that can help you as a cash crop, where you may be able to sell the produce of this crop, but it also helps to cover the soil and to keep in the moisture. The planting of some types of beans, also the cover crop, will go a long way in assisting in regulating the nutrient in the soil and also assist in adding nitrogen to your soil. When we look at crop diversification rotation or crop diversification, we look at planting a variety of crops in the same area instead of a single crop for more pest resilience, for disease, and for climate fluctuation. Now, when we say crop diversification, if you look at the diagram here, you're looking at, we here planting what you see as a crop where you can use for maybe making tea. You do see lettuce and you see scallion or herbs, as we call it. And in the background, you do see some greens. Now, some persons would call this what we call companion planting. What we're looking at, the herbs has a very strong scent. So the herbs in itself goes a long way as a part of deferring pests or deferring the butterflies or worms from attacking the crops that you see in terms of the lettuce. And as we know, the scallion or the herbs you see here is what we call a shallow rooting crop, meaning that the root does not go down very deep. So by the time you remove these herbs, you can then expand your leafy green crops, which in this case is lettuce, and it is that the lettuce can then benefit from having the herbs inside there. Also in the same diagram, you see some greens or collards that they do have the same benefit of the herbs as a green leafy crop of having the strong scent of the scallion or onion or even garlic as a way of preventing the pests from attacking your crops. These are some crops that you can also use in your crop rotation, where it is that one crop does assist in benefiting the other. That's what we're looking at also this evening. Now, another way of protecting our crops, another way of protecting our soil by introducing crop rotation or by introducing cover cropping is ensuring that we have an effective pest management strategy in place. Now, using strategies like biological control alongside crop rotation or intercropping, this does help to reduce the reliance on pesticides. Now, as we mentioned before, the overuse of pesticides can cause the soil or the subterranean water that we have to be polluted from chemicals. So using a biological pest to control the insects that would attack your crops, this would then reduce you having to use more pesticides, more phosphate chemicals in your crop planting or in your planting to get rid of the pests, thus making your crops healthier, reducing the amount of chemical you're adding to your crop, which goes into the soil, which can go into a water source. And we know we need to ensure that we have a healthy aqueduct or healthy water source for us to use. So we're looking at that. Now, particularly here now, we do have, or we might have some farmers here who do livestock farming. Now, when we're looking at livestock farming in particular, we're looking at grazing or grazing method. Now, the management of livestock grazing is very important in terms of ensuring that we have healthy soil and we have the soil being covered by vegetation. Now, once you have animals, sheep, goats, cattle, these animals or the grazing of these animals must be properly maintained, thus so that we ensure they have the soil being rotated properly, or we have the grazing area being rotated properly, thus allowing time for the crop, be it the grass or whatever legume you're feeding your animal, time for it to recover from that grazing. So rotational grazes involves moving your livestock across your field in a planned manner to promote pasture regeneration. Now, we may ask, but why is this important? It is important firstly because it offers food for your livestock. But more, this vegetation also offers a way of trapping carbon, the carbon dioxide that the animals, we all living animals, give off. It traps the carbon in the soil, and that carbon does help a lot in terms of making the soil much more healthier. Proper grazing management practices enhances the field ability to absorb water, minimize runoff water, leading to more drought-resistant pastures. Now, the runoff water, as we know, does not benefit your pastures, meaning that it simply moves from there into another area. So this can then cause your pasture to dry out. And once your pasture is dry, there's less forage for your animal to eat. And once there's less forage, we're then looking at soil erosion, reduction in the health of your crops. And we're also looking at the soil losing the nutrients, which makes it unhealthy for us to use. Now, in particular, we're looking at here now in terms of the techniques that we may use in terms of the soil conservation and water conservation. One particular technique that we're looking at here is something that we've been using over many areas, but it is that we're using this method in particularly to maintain the moisture in your soil. So we're looking at mulching. Now, we will see some diagrams later on about different types of mulch and how we use mulch, but just for this one here, we are using mulch as a way of maintaining the moisture content in the soil. So mulching involves covering the soil with organic or inorganic material to reduce evaporation, suppress weed growth, and to improve the structure of the soil. This technique enhances the moisture retention and promotes healthier crops. Now, you can use mulching exclusively to help to reduce the weeds you have in your crops. Or you can help it also in terms of reducing evaporation. But in particular, looking at here, mulching that covers all three of these areas. And mulch, as we mentioned, it may be something as the leaves of a branch. You may be able to use dry leaves that you may have from on your trees. You may also have what we call ground cover, which is black plastic that we use to cover the soil. You may use that also. In particularly here, as we mentioned before, cover cropping for soil health. You may do cover cropping as a way of maintaining your soil moisture, cover cropping to reduce runoff water. But cover cropping here involves planting specific crops during off-season to protect the soil from erosion, improve soil health, and to add organic matter to your soil. Now, this cover crop, as we mentioned before, may be something that could be family, pumpkin, squash, melon, sun melon, any of those. It may also be planting a different type of grass that would then cover your soil. Or it may involve planting something, as I mentioned, from the bean that would help to add nutrient to your soil. Now, these cover crops you're planting will enhance the water retention and also incorporate organic matter into your soil. All of these now form what we call soil management techniques. Now, soil management techniques, such as the use of moisture sensors and irrigation scheduling, ensures that the crop receives the appropriate amount of water at the right time. Now, some of these techniques may involve you using drip irrigation, may involve you using sprinklers, it may involve you using what we call time watering. So you may have watering in the evening and not in the morning, or water for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, and then water on and water off. These are many different techniques you would use. But a lot of these management or water management techniques would depend on your access to water and also the amount or the availability of finance or knowledge to source this type of techniques. Now, we mentioned before about climate resilience, and it is we need to ensure that we strengthen our resilience in terms of using particular strategies against climate resilience or making our agriculture more climate resilient. Strategic water management not only mitigates the impact of extreme weather, but it also fosters adapting farming techniques in climate resilience. By implementing effective irrigation and conservation techniques, farmers can better cope with the challenges that they will meet in terms of climate change and the adaptation to those climate changes. You may ask now, what are some of these techniques that we actually can use in that adaptation? One, we may use to our own irrigation system. As one of the first slides that we had, we look at conserving water from gravitation. You may have water that comes off on the hillside, and you may build an area you can store that water. Or in terms of irrigation through our sprinkles, or irrigation through micro drip irrigation. Now, whichever one of these systems that you may be able to implement in your type of farming or in your country, in your area, you need to ensure that effectively this system not only provides water for your farming or for your system, but that it does not negatively affect the environment in which you're functioning. Remember, we are focusing here on sustainability. So it is that if you're looking at sustainability, we need to ensure that the system we use is sustainable. Now, when you're considering an irrigation system that you want to use, definitely you need to know what are some of the factors that would assist you in determining what irrigation system to use. Now, when we speak here about natural conditions, for countries like Dominica that have more water, the system or the natural condition that they would have or the system that they would implement would be slightly different to a country like Barbuda or even Antigua that doesn't have a large amount of water or rivers or access to water. The type of crops that you're going to plant also, this will determine the type of system you're going to have. If you're planting more tree crops, as it is like cocoa, cassava, or coffee, larger crops are more permanent crops. The type of irrigation that you'll be using for those will be different to a crop that you may plant, such as lettuce, pak choy, or other crops that have a shorter time. When we consider the access or the type of technology that you have access to, this will determine your irrigation, particularly the type of technology and the experience your farmer or you as a farmer may have in terms of irrigation. That in itself would go a long way in terms of determining what type of irrigation system that you would want to look at, or what type of irrigation system you want to implement on your farm or in your country. The latter three, in terms of cost and cost benefits, is looking at ensuring that whatever system you use, that the output cost for that in terms of your productivity, it does value or it does make sense to use a kind of system. Doesn't make any sense to go and spend $40,000 on a system when you're making $5,000 out of it. You need to ensure that the cost benefit works well for you as a farmer. As we mentioned in terms of number one, the natural conditions, we look at now number 7, which speaks particularly with the availability of water. If you're looking at water that comes from subterranean or water that comes from runoff water, definitely the topography of that soil or the topography of your area or the incline or slope of your area, that would determine also in terms of the irrigation method that you would use in your farming. There's some successful practices that we've seen, some case studies that we've seen in terms of using innovative practices such as precision irrigation, as we mentioned before, or you may have a common community area system where some farmers do join together, maybe build a water dam that they can store water in, or they may have a ravine, or they may have a river or lake where water is pumped from and used for other farmers. Remember in our previous slide, we spoke about ensuring that we have that cost benefits. Now, it may mean that you may have some farmers who go in some of our cooperative and using the cooperative as a way of getting water to their crops, be it water being transported by truck, water that's being pumped from a river through large pipes and then distributed, or even water being stored in the dam. This is one way that we can have a successful way of ensuring that farmers join together in terms of a community water management system and ensuring that the access to water is sustainable and productive. Water conservation, we look now at water conservation and management technique. One of the first slides that we had, we said that when you carry your own water, you know the value of each drop of water. Now, water management practices, now these may entail, as we mentioned before, irrigation scheduling, water storage and caption, what we call dry farming, and water reuse. When we're looking at water scheduling means that we optimize the time and we optimize the method of applying or using water for our crops. When we speak about optimizing, we're speaking about ensuring that we have minimum water evaporation, minimum water loss through water just being blown away by the wind. When we speak about water storage and capture, we're looking at techniques for capturing water. Now, we mentioned before about ensuring that we have maybe proper drainage around our house so we can catch the rainwater from the roof and store it in a drum, in a barrel or somewhere, or we may have water runoff from the land and we can have that into a pond or lake or something. Or we may have water that we pump from the river or from some streams, and we must have a way of ensuring that water is stored. Now, one of the ways that we do have some farmers do, or one of the techniques that they use, what we call dry farming. Now, you'll say, but how can we have dry farming in farming when we need water? We do have some crops, or they have been researched that have developed crops that require less water or a minimum amount of water. So dry farming is a technique for cultivating crops where we have water scarce area. Now, one crops that some persons may say that we do use a lot in the Caribbean here, it's peanuts. Now, peanuts is a crop that it would need water at the initial stage when it's growing. Once the crops start developing, it does not necessarily need a steady excess or steady regular amount of water. Peanuts is a crop that can grow very well in some dry areas. Now, when we're looking at now here about reusing water, this is implemented a water system where you can recycle water. I know of someone who they simply use the bath water and water they come from where they wash their hands, and the water simply runs outside and goes into the banana trees, or goes outside into where they have their Tanya or Dashin or Edos area. So it is that they have the water being used inside the house for domestic use, but that water then goes out into the soil, where it's then reused to water and irrigate plants such as bananas, plantains, and so forth. So this is one way that the water can be reused. Now, remember, as I said before, we were looking at drip irrigation, particularly when we look at water management and water conservation and more efficient use of water. Drip irrigation is one particular area that water can be conserved and more precisely used. This is a system that delivers water directly to the plant roots, thus reducing evaporation, runoff water, and making sure we have more efficient use. Now, drip irrigation is a costly method, means that it is not something that is readily given out. There's some farmers or there's some countries who have cooperatives where they can distribute this to the farmers, but it is that it is a system that you do have an excellent cost benefit in terms of water efficiency and in terms of the production you'll get from using a drip irrigation. Now we look at also here, mulching, as we mentioned already, of one way, another technique of using. Now you may say, but I'm a farmer, I cannot afford to buy this plastic or the polyurethane, but you would have access to dry grass, to coconut leaves. These are some ways, or even a mulch coconut husk. These are all materials that can be used in your mulching. Now, in the mulching, we're looking at covering the soil with organic or inorganic material to retain moisture, to maintain the soil temperature, and it also assists in suppression of weeds. The examples that we see on our screen here, in terms of the use of dry grass, as we use here in the tomatoes, or you may see the plastic mulch as we use in terms of strawberry production. These are just two techniques that we can use in terms of the mulching, or two different types of mulching that we may be able to use in that area. Again, we look at climate adaptation, climate strategies, or climate resilience. Now, the adaptation in climate change is facilitated by effective water management, enabling farmers to implement strategies to mitigate the impact of extreme weather. The extreme weather may be extreme amount of rain, or it may be the extreme lack of rain. So it is that we need to ensure that whatever factors we use, as we mentioned, mulch, cover cropping, crop rotation, or drip irrigation, that we ensure that these techniques that we use are techniques that can be adaptive, or that are adapted for each particular unique area, each particular unique type of production that we have, or type of crop production that we're looking at. As we mentioned before, we can then look at nutrient and residue management. Now, we mentioned before about mulching. We mentioned before about zero tillage. We mentioned before about reduced tillage. We look at here now about using some of this green manure or green material. We use that to turn into manure, into compost, and then we can then reuse that compost back in our fields as nutrient. We look at our first slide where we have zero tillage, where you then simply plant a crop on the residue of our original crop. Our second diagram we look at here is in terms of we have minimum tillage, where we are now using, or we do minimum tillage in the soil and thus reduce the damage or the exposure we will have of that soil to the drying out of the sun. We also use some of that same initial crop material to cover our soil as a mulch, goes back into nutrient, puts back nutrient, maintains the soil temperature, and it also acts as a weed suppressant. Organic fertilizer, such as using compost and manure, green manure may be the vegetation you have from your crop to enhance the soil fertility and also increase the nutrient content. Managing crop residue, we're looking at leaving crop residue in the field after harvest to protect the soil and to improve the organic matter and reduce the soil erosion. Now, all of these techniques do not function by themselves uniquely. It is an addition or a joining of all of these different techniques that we use ensuring that we as a farmer in your particular area, choosing which one of these techniques work well for you, or which one of the combination of these techniques work well for you in your particular area. Now, you will ask, what is a pathway forward for sustainable agriculture? It must involve water management and irrigation. Now, we're looking at water management. Effective water management and irrigation is not just a practice, but an essential pillar in the sustainable agriculture. Remember, as we mentioned before, sustainable agriculture, it is agriculture for today and for all the tomorrows to come. And in doing that, we must adapt efficient strategies by utilizing diverse irrigation methods and implementing conservation techniques that will assist in enhancing crop production and crop resilience. Continuous innovation, investment in agricultural water management and agricultural irrigation techniques is crucial in addressing the challenge we have in terms of the global food crisis that is presently going on, and the global food challenge in terms of food security, and the global food challenge in terms of adapt to the environmental change. In adapting to this environmental change, it is crucial that we have the most efficient and effective water management techniques. We need to ensure that we have that. So we need to ensure, one, that we take action in water conservation. In taking action, we need to ensure that we implement effective water collection, conservation methods, and storage methods, which are vital for water management. It may be at the community level, it may be at an individual level, but this must be actively engaged in practices in protecting and conserving water resource to ensure the availability of water for all future generations. Now, as you see the diagram we're looking at here, you will see a variety of vegetation. You'll also see methods in terms of shade housing, planting in boxes, a community box, or even covering the soil to ensure that we have less water loss. Now, water management and irrigation, ensuring that we have an effective strategy in water management and irrigation helps in terms of conserving the soil, preserving the fresh water that we need for our crops and we need for our personal consumption, and also ensuring that we have an effective crop production, and also mitigate the effect of climate change on our environment, and ensuring that we have an environment to pass on to all our future generations. This evening, ladies, is a presentation that I wish to show to you, and I would hope that we can have a robust discussion and that we have a robust amount of questions, not only about the presentation, but also about any question you may have in terms of your methods or any technique that you've used in terms of water irrigation, or any strategy that you've used in your own production area. And I hope that you can share some of that with us, that we can enlighten each other and ensuring that we have an environment and a climate that we can pass on to future generations. I'll now pass over to Toya so we can have our question and answer area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. A pleasant good night again to everyone. If persons have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. In the meantime, I'm going to take some questions from in the question and answer area. And we have the first question. Mr. Bell, it says, we hear a lot about desalination. Is that a type of water that is good for plant?
Desalinated water, not to be technical, is simply taking seawater, purifying it, take out the salt, the sodium out of it, and you have fresh water. It's like you're taking a bucket of seawater, take it home, put it on your stove, boil it, condense the vapors, so you're taking out the water out of it and leave the salt in it. That water can be used. Now, it is that one that quite a few Caribbean islands are not using, as it is that a lot of our water sources are now being affected not only by excessive use of chemicals or even by the encroachment by the sea, but it is that because as the islands or as the countries expand, the use and need for efficient fresh water increases. So it is one that can be used. So definitely we can use that water in agriculture, in our crops and our animals.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. The next question is, what are some of the biological controls that can be used in pest management?
Biological control. Quite a few years back, we had a serious infestation here of the mealybug. The mealybug attacked most plants that were in the Solanaceae family, which would be like sorrel, sweet peppers, and so forth. They attack a lot our hibiscus plants also. So it is that there's a wasp that could be used for that. There are other pesticides that other insects that you can use to control your pest. As I mentioned, I think I had a slide in there that shows we planted a crop like scallion, onion, herbs that have a very strong scent between our leafy green, between our cabbage, lettuce, and so forth. This can act as a deterrent for it. Practical way they can use, there's a type of ground cover that we have that has a silver side and a black side. You turn the silver side up, so when pests coming down or when we have butterflies and so on coming down to lay the eggs, the glare from it will blind them and that will deter them also, so you can use that. There are quite a few other types of biological pests that you can use that we just for you to research, but you need to ensure that whatever type of biological pest you're going to use, you need to first research the impact that would have on your biological, on your system, and your ecosystem. Okay, you're hearing me? Everybody's hearing me? Hello? Okay, yes, you're hearing me. Toya, go ahead. Okay, Toya, you hearing me? Okay, I'm not sure if she's hearing me clearly. I'm just going back out into the chat. Let me see here. Question. Okay, let me go to one here.
Okay, one question. So I was saying, apart from peanuts suggested, can you provide some other examples of crops that can be used in farming?
In farming or in dry farming?
In
Maybe
dry farming, sorry.
more in
In
dry
dry
farming.
farming, yes.
We have peanuts, we have cassava, sweet potatoes. These are three of the main ones that we have in terms of here in our Caribbean region that we can use in terms of dry farming. These are crops that require minimum amount of water in terms of their production. Those are the three main ones that we have right now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Kindly remember, folks, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and you are free to unmute yourself. I've enabled that. However, the next question in the question and answer section, Mr. Bell, to you, does it matter that the water from the sink going to the banana tree is soapy?
No, it does not matter. One beautiful thing we have is soil. Soil will filter through your detergent, your bleach, and all of that. When the plant absorbs the water, the soil have already filtered through all of that. Remember, in the soil we have charcoal, minerals, and so many other things that filter that water. So you don't have to worry about that. The soapy water won't do any damage to your plants, to your banana trees, or any other trees you're looking at.
Thank you. Next question now, Mr. Bell. What methods can you use to gather water if there are no buildings around?
I visited a farm once where a farmer he had a piece of galvanized, he simply angled it down and he put a barrel underneath of it. When rain fell on the galvanized, it just went straight into the barrel. Something as simple as that. Or having any type of open area. You may have a fridge turn upside down where rainfall water serves in there. You may have some of these plastic barrels that we get, you cut them half, leave them open when rain falls, you have that. If you're looking at an area where you have incline, where you'll have runoff water, you may have a way of creating a gully or just dig a hole where water runs in. Once the water settles down in there, you might not be able to extract it, but it's soaked down and it goes into the soil area. So you can have access for that water. But it's just to have some way of catching the water that comes from the rain naturally. That's what you'll have to look at.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I'm not seeing any hands in the chat. Please remember. Okay, Melissa, you may unmute yourself and ask your question. Melissa, can you hear me? Okay, feel free to ask your question. Okay, I'm seeing her mic, but we are not hearing her. Okay, well, Melissa, get started. We'll take one more question from in the chat. Mr. Bell, I am wondering, for drip irrigation, what is the minimum height that is required for this to be effective?
Remember, drip irrigation is irrigation that is going to be on the ground right beside the plant roots. So I'm not sure in terms of the height that you're speaking about, but you can use drip irrigation around a fruit tree. You can use drip irrigation from a small plant as a tomato tree. It is that it is the consistent moisture being applied right to the plant root. And because it's being applied right to the plant root, the plant can access that water quickly without it being blown away by wind or without the heat of the sun drying that water up. So it can be used even in large fruit trees, or it can be used something as a tomato or sweet pepper tree. You can have that.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I see Cindy Smith. Alexander have her hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, please, Cindy. Cindy, can you hear me? Melissa? Okay. We'll go back to the question and answer area. Mr. Bell, to you again. Is mulch more or less effective with moisture conditions?
Mulch is effective in both areas, both in a dry and moist condition. In a moist condition, you need to ensure that you replenish it more, because what would happen, the mulch itself will break down much faster. So it goes from mulching now to organic matter being incorporated into the soil. Whereas in a drier area, the mulch will basically stay on the surface. So both can be effective, but in a moist condition, you need to replenish that mulch more often.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. We now have a question from the chat. And Jacqueline is asking, do you have a special drip irrigation system?
Most agricultural areas do sell the drip irrigation. It comes as in 12-inch dimensions, meaning it's a half-inch thick black polyurethane. The distance between the emitters can be anywhere from 12 inches to as far as 36 inches. You can buy it ready done. There are some persons who buy the plain black polyurethane and they simply pierce a hole and put in an emitter to whatever distance they would want. I think somebody was asking me if they could just buy a regular hose and just pop some holes in it. The challenge with doing that is that eventually what's going to happen, the water keep coming out, algae is going to grow in that hole, and eventually it's going to block up that hole. So you have to go back every time to keep cleaning that hole to keep the water go out efficiently. So doing that is not effective in terms of a good irrigation system. purchasing or acquiring the proper irrigation system that comes designed specifically for drip irrigation, that would assist, that would be much, much better.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Melissa, you want to try again, please? We are seeing your mic is open, but we are not hearing anything. Okay, so we'll take one question from in the chat. Mr. Bell, would mulch attract slugs if you are growing scallions?
Yes, it would. Because slugs feed on the rotting material. That is their best food. Once the vegetation starts rotting, it makes it easy for the slugs to eat. A simple way you can look at, you may use something like 5% 7 in that area. That would assist you greatly in the slug infestation. Some persons say they do use the common house salt. The challenge I have with the common house salt is that when you're applying the salt to that soil, you maybe get rid of the slugs, but what you're now doing is you're then changing the pH of your soil. I had a farmer who said to me that they do use the sorghum, the sargassum that we see around here on the beach, and that has gone a long way in terms of warding off the slugs from going into your garden. I personally have not had that, but she says she's had very good success in keeping the slugs out of her garden by using the sargassum. So that's something maybe use if you have the slugs coming into your scallions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bell. Melissa, do you want to try again? Okay, we'll take one question from the question and answer area. Can I buy a hose and put holes in it as a drip hose, or do I have to buy a special type of hose?
I would say buy your drip irrigation hose. Don't just go and buy some regular garden hose and dig some hole in it. It will not work as effective. And I think for your cost effectiveness, that doesn't make any sense to do it. What's going to happen, the holes that you would pierce would then grow algae, and the algae will block up the pipe. Then your plants will not be getting the efficient water that you want. You're thinking the plants are being watered. So it's best just to buy the drip irrigation. I see Melissa's saying here, you're not allowing me. I'm not sure what's going on with Melissa.
She actually have the permission. I'm not sure what's happening. That's why you can see the mic by her name. She would have to unmute her mic herself. Melissa, you do have permission. You'll have to unmute your mic and speak. You have permission to talk, Melissa.
Melissa Jessup, try to unmute your mic and see.
Okay, let's take another one.
Okay.
What role can technology such as soil moisture sensors, or AI, play in helping farmers use water more efficiently?
The answer for that question is actually in the question. These sensors in the soil will tell you how much moisture is in the soil, how much moisture, how much water the plant needs in that soil. It also tell you temperature, how the temperature affects the amount of water being lost through transpiration or through evaporation. What it also does, it will give you real-time data in terms of real-time sensors information in terms of how we can use your water more effectively. There's some plants that we know who store more water in the body of the plant. There's some plants who store more water in the roots. So the sensors will then give you that information in real time. So you make sure you use that. Now remember, AI and technology is a costly, and you need to ensure when you're investing in this type of AI technology that you do the cost benefit for it, not just going because you say somebody works well. Ensure that it is something that you can then make your money from. Okay, so Melissa, hand is up again. Melissa, try unmuting and go ahead.
Melissa, I'm not sure what the problem is, but the fact that the mic is there, it means that you do have talking permission to talk.
Melissa, go ahead. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Go ahead.
Okay, another question then. Persons are being encouraged to engage in backyard gardening. However, many of them rely on the use of herbicide and pesticides due to getting quick results. Should the use of pesticide and herbicide be used in a residential area, especially when the houses are close to each other?
No, I do not recommend that. I know that farmers are saying, yes, I'm getting quick results, I'm killing off the pests. Yes, you are. What you're also doing is exposing your own household and the persons in the environment to the pesticide that you are using. That is one. Two, you're actually increasing the amount of chemicals in the crops that you're using. Now, if it is that your production is a small backyard area, there are so many other options you maybe use. Something as simple as burning some newspapers, having the ash, mix it in water, add some dish liquid to it, and you apply that maybe to one of your leafy crops like your lettuce, your cabbage, your broccoli, your cauliflower, as we have warding off worms and pests. You may be able to use that. You may be able to use the same combination on your sweet peppers, where you may have some blight, or you may have some mealybug, or you may have some other small pests that you have. You may decide, okay, I want to get some neem and some cayenne pepper. These are quite effective insecticides that you can use as a way of warding off the pests off your crop. But the use of insecticide and herbicide in a small close or your backyard area where you have your neighbors right behind you, the application of the chemicals there does not only stay there, it travels by the wind over to your neighbors or even over to your neighbors' crops or animals. So you need to be very careful with that.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Now, you would only see the mic next to your name, just for clarification, if I've given permission to you. So if you raise your hand to ask a question, I would give you permission to unmute your mic, so you'll be able to see the mic and you can unmute yourself to speak. Okay, next question, next one, Mr. Bell. This one is a comment. I'm interested in biological control measures. Okay, question now. Could you identify some examples of biological pest control that could be used in the Caribbean, and what measures a farmer can adapt to increase and maintain biological pest control?
I think that's one of the questions we had before about there's a wasp you can use in the case of like mealybug, in the case of some worms that you have. What I mentioned, and somebody asked a similar question before, you need to ensure whatever biological pest that you're considering in your research, ensure that this biological pest is not one that you would then import that would negatively affect your local ecosystem. Because remember, you're introducing a pest into it. So you need to ensure that you have the information or the connection or the discussion with your extension agricultural officer, who will then be able to advise you of what you can use. Maintenance of it will depend on what the biological pest that you're using. One example I gave is that we had an introduction of a wasp here in St. Kitts. This wasp particularly, it was brought in by the Ministry of Agriculture to affect the pink mealybug that was ravishing the country here. But this wasp was uniquely to that. It only ate that mealybug. Because once there was no mealybug, the wasp died. So it did not go into our ecosystem to affect our ecosystem. But it is that you need to ensure that whatever you use, you do that in conjunction with your extension officer in your department or Ministry of Agriculture.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Next question. How often will I need to clean or replace the drip lines to prevent clogging, especially in areas with hard water or debris?
If you're using the drip line that you would purchase, and if you have hard water that has debris in it, particular water debris, using a simple filter, a sponge, something that the water filter that will separate the debris from going into the drip irrigation, that can be used. If the water is hard, I mean it's high in calcium, just regular checks on your irrigation to see how it is flowing. You need to make sure you do that. You could do that between every cycle of crop, which is maybe about every 2.5 to 3 months, or you do it just on a regular basis, as you would need to do in your garden to make you looking at that. But the main way is to ensure that you don't have the debris getting into your irrigation system. That will be your best area.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Okay, next question. Lentils require minimum water, and Caribbean people do consume a lot of it. Maybe it can be looked at to incorporate in our joy crop. So
yes, I do agree
mm-hmm.
that can be one of the crops that we could look at, because it is again in the same bean family. It requires minimum water. It goes in now. The crop itself is a nitrogen fixing crop. It puts nitrogen into the soil. It can go as a cover crop, meaning it helps to cover the soil to keep in the moisture. And you can use it for forage for your animal, but you can use it as a way of harvesting the beans for use as crop. So in all four areas, it is a very effective crop. So that can be done.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Next question. I have clay soil, which is so compact that the water barely goes down into the soil. Sometimes I dig up around the plants and then water them. Is that a good practice? And what's the best irrigation for clay soil?
Before you get to the irrigation, it will be good for you to make sure you add something to help to aerate the clay soil. It may be you may add in some crushed coconut, the coconut husk. We do have some cocoa peat that you may be able to use to increase the aeration in your clay soil. We do have farmers who do add organic matter, a combination of organic matter and gut sand. Gut sand is just larger pebbles in it to help to aerate the soil. Irrigation, the drip irrigation is the best, because you don't want this excessive amount of water staying on the surface, which will cause muddling or puddling, as we call it, and then the sun will simply dry up that water and make the clay even harder. So the drip irrigation will be the best method for you to use.
Okay, that was the last question. Melissa, I don't know if you're having any luck, but the option is there. Melissa, you might need to check the settings on your phone so that you can allow the mic access, because you have permission. And Mr. Bell, we currently don't have any more questions. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? Kindly raise your hand.
I see one over here. It's just a comment. The person says there are some organic pesticides like neem oil and aramide that can be used. Yes, that is very effective. In particularly the neem, particularly in the leafy greens, the aramide, it works very, very well in terms of your sweet peppers, your tomatoes, your eggplants, and so forth. They do very well. Okay, next person says they can expose themselves to all kinds of sicknesses. Yeah, using pesticides, so we have that. So yes, we have that.
Okay, Teresa, you may ask your question.
Okay, good night. No,
Good
it's
night.
not well, it's really not a question about the water thing going on there tonight. I'm just curious. Okay. I have big trees. So I have an avocado tree. How do you know the avocado is good?
Have you tasted your avocado, Teresa?
I
Once the
tasted it
avocado
already.
tastes good, it's good. But if you're
No, but you see, you're getting so many people telling you so many different things. It's like when it's raining, you're not supposed to pick it when it's raining. Some people tell you when it's shaking. Some people tell you so many different things. So you're wondering now, because honestly speaking, I planted that tree in COVID-19. And I am so surprised that the tree have already given me fruits. All I have people say taking so long, but mine, it's how many years we have COVID pass, and the tree already have. And I'm like, Okay, everybody. I say I want to know when it's ready because I have mango trees and everything, so I know about those fruits. But the avocado is what I don't know about. The first time I'm having an avocado tree that's bearing. So I want to know at what stage do you pick it? How do you know it's ready?
Okay. There's some type of the avocados. There's some that have what we call like the pear shape, which is like a bottleneck. They're small to the top and wider to the bottom. They tend to
Mm-hmm.
sometimes go from a deep to a lighter shade green. So sometimes
Ah.
that is one indication that you time to harvest. I do not
Mhm.
suggest that you take the fruit and you shake it.
I wouldn't
The,
do that.
the problem with shaking the food, a lot of persons don't know. When you shake the food, you're actually causing that food to spoil because what you're doing, the seed in the side is ponging up inside there.
Oh, and,
So you cut it
uh-huh.
and they start to get black.
Okay.
People have this habit
That's
of putting pear
all.
by the ear and shaking and say, oh yeah, this is good. No,
Ah,
it is not good for the pear. It's not
okay.
good. You're looking at
All
the
right.
coloration and looking at the size of the fruit. There are
Okay.
some
So
fruits that
the
are much bigger, some are
mm-hmm.
smaller in size, but it depends. As I said, it's a trial and error to some time. I am not sure what type of pear tree you have. They have some pear when they red, they start to turn red. Some of them stay green. Some do turn a light green to yellow. It depends on the pear that you have.
Okay. The one I have, it's really like a real pear shape with a big
Mm-hmm.
bam and a tiny head, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
I must say I taste one and it's really lovely. But
Very
how
good.
I taste it, there was a wind some time ago that was
And the
really heavy,
fall.
and I saw the tree bending. I'm like, oh Lord, I pray that the tree doesn't fall up and down. And lo and behold, 2 days after that, I got two pairs on the ground. And I just when I put it to oh, the thing was lovely. But I never knew they falling like mangoes too because one day I got one on the ground, there was no wind, and I'm like, does it fall like mangoes? I don't know.
Yes, once the pear has gotten to a maturity level, the stem will simply detach from
Uh-huh.
the fruit tree, and the pear will fall.
Okay.
That's why like mango when they ripen, they will fall. The same thing will happen with pear,
Oh,
as with all
okay.
fruits.
So then the fact that it's doing that already, then which means they're ready to pip it.
Yes,
Ah,
that is reached that stage.
okay. So I'm like, seeing that I want to ask the question, but I'm saying it's not about fruit trees he's speaking about, but anyway, it's still farming, right?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you
Thank
to
you very
Mr.
much.
Bell. I always do shake my avocados. Now I know not to.
Not to
That's
shake
it's not
it.
good to do that at all.
Not at all. Okay, so Mr. Bell, we had another question in the chat. Would you recommend biochar application in soil conservation technique as a
Yes,
soil conservation
yes.
technique?
Yes, you can do that. That improves improves the soil structure and the soil texture of your soil. And once you improve in those, you improve the health of the soil. Once you improve the health of the soil will then filter water better. It will then be able to grow better cover crop to preserve the nutrient and to preserve the moisture in it. And it can have a healthier soil for growing your crops. Yes, you can do that.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions, any comments, anything anybody would like to share? I'm guessing Mr. Bell did such a fabulous job as usual. So thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Okay, so I guess there's just a lot of hearts and applause. So, Mr. Bell, I think everybody had a wonderful time as usual. And I think you really made an impact. So I really want to thank the ladies for having you, and I want to thank everyone for their active participation into the tonight's session on water management and irrigation. I know it has been some wonderful sessions. I see the enthusiasm, I hear the questions, I see the willingness to share as well as experiences. I did study one about the Egyptian zip lines that are still going. That has
Yes,
me to
very good.
have to go and look to see a little bit more about those. So I do hope though that everybody are leaving today with ideas and techniques that they can apply to their farms to make the most of their water resources. I would like to extend a special thank you again to you, Mr. Bell, for leading us to these last three sessions, looking at under the principles of sustainable agriculture and its importance. techniques of maintaining healthy soil, and tonight, effective water use and irrigation techniques. I think your guidance and knowledge on these areas and the dedication you made to this series is so engaging, informative, and extremely practical for all of us. So I want to thank you for that. I also have some exciting news. Unfortunately, it's only for our members in St. Kitts and Nevis that we will be holding our first practical session at Mr. Bell's farm with our very own Mr. Lindbergh Bell on Saturday, October 25th. So kindly please save the date, mark it in your calendar. Saturday, October 25th, first practical for St. Kitts and Nevis at Mr. Bell's farm. Don't worry, we'll share some pictures and probably some videos if possible. So save this date. This will be a fantastic opportunity to put into practice everything that we've learned and to ask Mr. Bell some of the tougher questions face to face. Once again, thank you all for your engagement. And before I close, I see Mr. Bell, there's another question. Do you recommend all farmers to educate themselves in irrigation?
Yes, I would recommend all farmers educate themselves, whether you use irrigation with a water tank, whether you have drip irrigation, use channel irrigation, just do rain fed, whatever you do. Remember, water is a limited resource. It is one that we don't have a lot of, so we need to ensure that we use it as effective as possible. So the best, whether you research, whether you speak to other farmers who are farming, get some of their best practices, or if you go online and research, I strongly suggest that you educate yourself as much as you can in that area so you can get the best possible to do it.
Okay, Dolores. We have Dolores Martin with her hand up. Dolores, you may unmute your mic and ask your question.
Sorry, that was an accident.
Okay. Well, I know I feel the love and some persons don't want Mr. Bell to leave. So once again, thank everyone for their engagement in the past 3 sessions with Mr. Bell. We want to thank everybody for their dedication to these sessions, for trying to improve their farming practices. I think it is extremely inspiring each time we have these sessions. And I look forward to seeing everyone again on the upcoming sessions. And don't forget, those for St. Kitts and Nevis, first practical session, October 25th, St. Kitts, Mr. Lindbergh Bell Farm. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Have a pleasant good night, and thank you very much for having me.